This channel is supported by truefire. truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So I started doing a video with this Kemper because I think the Kemper is one of the major things that has changed live guitar and the guitar world. You know, touring guitarists all over the world now, a lot of them are using some sort of direct rig, and I think the Kemper is the thing that nudged a lot of people over to this approach. Obviously, I don't know much about being a touring guitarist, given that I'm a bedroom guitarist mostly, or you know, like a normal gig guitarist, not a huge band guitarist. I decided that I'd ask some people, and I did get some really interesting responses from. Because I realised I don't really know much about this stuff, obviously. So in this video now, I'm going to be using a capture of my 1965 Pro Reverb, and I've just put together a preset where I have a large spring on there, which is a little bit springy, and an analog delay, and then the Kemper drive I've got on the foot switch, switching on and off. That's the entire rig, and what you're hearing in this video, a profiler remote and a rack profiler. Before the Kemper came along, so touring and, you know, people have gradually adopted the Kemper, and I just asked, like, Rob Harris from Jamiroquai, Rob, like, how does this stuff work? So basically, Rob used to tour with amps, so he used to have, like, a dual amp rig. After that, he had a Lone Star rig, I think 2 Lone Stars. Then after that, he went down to 1/13. And then he moved on to Kemper. Now he uses a quad Cortex. Like, the rig has shrunk down. What was interesting about this to me was, so basically you do your tour rehearsal, and then you got to pack everything into a truck, and that gets freighted to wherever the tour is happening. And this is a thing that I'd not really, you know, really ever thought about before. Like, how do these amps get to the venue? Or, you know, if you see someone like Joe Bonamassa who's like using all of these crazy amps, those need to get to the venue somehow. And not only that, but then there's other types of gigs. So Rob plays with Sister Sledge as well, or played with, and those would be like backline gigs where you have a band rider essentially on that. You'd say, well, at this venue we need these amps, and then if you look into this, basically you get like backline hire companies. I sold an amp to one who does like Glastonbury and stuff like that. Their job is essentially to hire you an amp, or hire the band, or hire the event an amp for a duration, and you pay like £25 to £50 a day plus your delivery charge, and they probably do like drum kits and keyboards and all that other stuff as well. That's, I think, how a lot of touring guitarists that aren't taking their own amps work. So you'd like say, I'd need either a twin or a super reverb, and then it's the job of someone managing that tour to make sure that at each and every venue there is an amp suitable for you to use. Rob said that for Sister Sledge, he would ask for just Hot Rod Deluxes, I think, or Hot Rod DeVilles, have a pair of them, you know, one for backup and one for... So that's kind of how the industry still works if you're using an amp, I guess. And let me know in the comments if it's different for you. The only time that I went to Israel for a month of playing, and for that I basically, there was a twin at the venue, because you're just playing at a hotel for a month. And then I took my own pedals, and I think we took our own desk and that sort of stuff. But for these actual like huge acts and stuff like that, either you're freighting across your own amps, or if you're touring where you've got like a bus, for instance, Pliny and Jack Gardner, they just had another trailer following the band which had the gear chucked into it. So it's kind of interesting to think about that. Now, what the Kemper basically did, I guess, was mean that acts, I presume, are able to basically reduce the bill somewhat. For instance, you know, carting around 2 amps and 2 4x12s, you'd guess would cost quite a bit more. Or if you're hiring an amp at every single venue, if it's like 50 quid per gig, we're told that the cost of touring go up and up and up. You know, if you've got to hire specific gear for every single venue, and also the logistics of actually, you know, sorting and planning that stuff out. You imagine that's, you know, quite a lot of work for someone managing the tour, right? Kind of interesting, I think, like a little bit of a glimpse behind the scenes and the stuff that we don't really think about. But a lot of these touring acts, like Mark Knopfler, the 1975, the big acts, a lot of them are still, or are now using Kempers, and I think it's kind of interesting. So Dan, Kemper user, you've probably seen his YouTube channel, check it out, great player. I asked him, I guess the question is like, if amps are so much better, how come pros were and are happy to switch to the modelling stuff on tours? Did you ever do anything before the Kemper, like with backline stuff? He said, I did a bit, mostly a broken twin or Hot Rod Deluxe. I once got a decent JCM 900 half stack. A big part of why I moved to Kemper, I now just fly with a USB stick. Kempers are so easy to hire abroad from most backline companies. Plus with digital stuff, it either works or it doesn't. No hums or crackles because it hasn't been serviced or a blown speaker. I think amps will always have the fun factor edge, but as soon as you're on IEMs and have stage volume constraints, amps lose the fun factor anyway. I know I'd rather have the consistency rather than my ears sounding totally different night to night because the power in the venue isn't stable or the mic on the cab has moved 1mm. The one question that I have is like, is it possible to then get back to a situation where you're able to take an amp? So I've got other friends that are touring and, you know, they say it's very gig dependent. Like sometimes it's just assumed if like it was a pop gig that you'll be going direct to desk somehow. I think like the Jacob Collier band are all on Helix. The guy that does their engineering is in the Line 6 group. I don't know how you feel about like the sound of a Kemper live. I think there's a bunch of people in my DMs that use them, and certainly that use them as like a gateway into the modelling world. You know, a lot of people have enjoyed the Kemper and then potentially moved on, or a lot of people are still using them. I think that's kind of cool. But yeah, here I've just got another guy who's on these tours. So I asked him the question, if you were doing a gig outside the UK, how do you decide if you have an amp or not? And then what happens? He said, the big factor for me is if we're on in-ears or not. I usually request specific backline, 65 or 68 Fender Deluxe normally, and I always get them or a Hot Rod. When I was still playing like in an original kind of electronic band, it was like 2015, around then, and I was showing up, so we did like a bunch of fairly big-ish gigs, for me at least, like the O2 Academy in Bristol, and then we did a few other gigs around like maybe the Arts Club in Liverpool, and somewhere, anyway, like a few gigs. There was a band that I was supporting called St. Raymond, and their guitarist, like, at the time the Kemper was relatively new, and there were kind of, people were still sort of, there was like a buzz around it, and people were talking about like, oh, this is making things way easier. I think on those sorts of gigs where you've got like decent monitors in every venue, I think that was kind of the thing around it then. It's like, well, this is a really cool thing where, you know, you can tempo sync everything up. It's small, it works really well with in-ear mixes and stuff like that. Yeah, my gateway back into the modelling world, because I was using like 4-cable amps and stuff then. I guess the kind of good things about something like this for live stuff, if you're imagining like it's for these touring situations, is, you know, each venue, like stages and stuff like that, sound's going to be different. Power across the world is different, as well as, you know, amps can be in various states of repair. They might have a hum, they might have broken channels, all that sort of stuff that maybe you wouldn't know until you're on the gig. And if you're in ears anyway, and the stage volume isn't super crazy loud, potentially this could be more consistent and maybe preferable to playing like through a dodgy amp. And also, like, it could be your sounds. I think the downside with it is possibly, depending on the situation, going to be a little bit more difficult to get back to real amps if you were deciding that that was what you want to do. Because I did ask in the comments, and there was like on Instagram a few people that have like dabbled in the digital gear, then maybe switched between the two. Once you've gone digital and that money has been taken out of the budget, is it easy to get it back in, or is that the sort of thing that's going to be difficult to then request? I don't know. Once the amp's gone from the stage, is it easy to get the amp back on stage, I guess is my question, if you wanted to.